I'm Margaret, a 68-year-old widow, and for most of my life, I believed I understood what it meant to carry grief. But nothing prepared me for the loss of my son, Daniel. He was my only child, the steady rhythm of my days, and when they told me his car had gone off the highway late one night, my world collapsed. The police said it was fatigue, just a tragic accident. Friends told me time would ease the ache, but every morning I woke with the same hollow in my chest. I tried to be strong at his funeral, but even then something inside me whispered that not everything was as it seemed. Daniel's wife, Melissa, played the grieving widow with elegance, dressed in black silk that shimmered under the church lights. People whispered about her composure, about how beautifully she cried. I sat in the front pew, wondering why her grief felt rehearsed while mine was raw and uncontainable. Just days later, at the will reading, the room shifted. Melissa inherited nearly everything: his company, the beach house, the wealth he had worked so hard for. And then, unexpectedly, the lawyer turned to me. My name was written in Daniel's voice, leaving me not money, not stock portfolios, but something else entirely: the old farmhouse in Pine Valley. Melissa's face drained of color when she heard it. That was when I knew this farmhouse, the one she always dismissed as a rundown shack, carried a weight I couldn't yet see, and deep down, I felt Daniel was still speaking to me, even from beyond. That moment was only the beginning, because what waited inside that farmhouse would unravel everything I thought I knew about my son, his marriage, and the truth behind his death. And that leads me into the days surrounding his funeral and the strange reading of his will. The morning of Daniel's funeral was gray, as though the sky itself carried the weight of my loss. The church bells echoed through the town, slow and heavy, and I remember clutching the hem of my black dress, trying to steady my hands. My grief felt quiet, deep, the kind that sits in your bones. I barely spoke. I just held on to memories of my son, hoping they wouldn't slip away. Melissa, on the other hand, turned her sorrow into theater. She wailed so loudly that people in the back pews shifted uncomfortably. She clung to his coffin as though the cameras of an invisible audience were watching. Some said it was a touching display of devotion, but to me, it felt rehearsed, too polished. I couldn't help but wonder who her performance was really for. Then came her insistence that Daniel be buried in private, with no open casket, no lingering goodbyes. She said she couldn't bear the sight. I tried to accept it, telling myself everyone grieves differently. Still, I felt robbed of the chance to kiss his forehead one last time. That unsettled me more than I wanted to admit. A few days later, we gathered in a lawyer's office for the will reading. My heart raced as I waited to hear Daniel's words, perhaps some small note left just for me. Melissa's face lit up as one asset after another was named his business, the accounts, the vacation house. It was all hers. And then, unexpectedly, my name appeared. My son had left me the old farmhouse in Pine Valley. Melissa's smile cracked for just a moment, her jaw tightening. I noticed it, even if no one else did. Why would this old, neglected property rattle her when she had already inherited everything else? I left the office carrying more questions than answers. The grief in my chest was heavy, but beneath it, a seed of suspicion had begun to grow. Something about Melissa's behavior, about that farmhouse, didn't add up. And so I decided I would go there myself. That old house in Pine Valley was waiting for me, and I had a feeling it carried truths Melissa never wanted me to see. The road to Pine Valley felt longer than I remembered. As I drove past miles of winding countryside, I couldn't shake the feeling that Daniel had meant for me to come here. The farmhouse sat at the end of a dirt lane, its white paint chipped, the shutters sagging as though time itself had weighed them down. From the outside, it looked abandoned, forgotten by everyone except my son. Stepping inside was like opening a chapter of his life I had never read. Dust floated in the air, catching the light through broken blinds. The floorboards creaked under my weight, and I found myself whispering his name, half expecting him to answer. There were boxes stacked against the walls, some labeled in Daniel's handwriting, others left blank. It didn't look like a man preparing to die. It looked like someone hiding something. I walked room by room, touching furniture covered in sheets, running my hands over photographs left behind. Then I noticed something odd in the kitchen. One of the drawers was jammed shut. With a little effort, I pried it open and found an envelope, its edges worn. Inside were receipts, expensive jewelry, hotel bookings, payments made in cash, all dated just months before his death. My stomach tightened. These weren't gifts for me. They weren't even things I recognized. For a moment, I stood there frozen, the farmhouse silent around me. It was as if Daniel had left me a trail, breadcrumbs pointing toward a truth Melissa had tried to bury. Why had he kept these here, in a place she clearly despised? Why was I the one to inherit this house, and not her? I could almost hear his voice urging me to keep looking, to not stop at the surface. That farmhouse, neglected on the outside, was a vault of secrets on the inside. As the evening sun cast long shadows across the wooden floors, I realized this was only the beginning. Melissa's reaction at the will reading suddenly made sense. She hadn't cared about losing the farmhouse itself. She was terrified of what I might find inside. And deep in my heart, I knew I had just uncovered the first clue. Next, I would have to face her. When I called Melissa to tell her I had gone to the farmhouse, her silence was sharp enough to cut through the phone line. She didn't ask what I found, only whether I planned on staying there. That question alone told me more than her words ever could. She was worried, and that worry gave me strength. A few days later, I agreed to meet her at a cafe in town. She arrived late, dressed to perfection as always, sunglasses hiding her eyes though it was already dusk. She leaned across the table with a smile that felt painted on, asking how I was holding up, how lonely the farmhouse must feel. Beneath her polished concern, I could sense the tremor of someone holding a mask in place. Inside, my thoughts tangled. Should I confront her directly about the receipts, the hotel stays, the jewelry that had never been mine? Part of me wanted to shout, to accuse her of betraying Daniel in ways I couldn't yet prove, but another part knew I had to be careful. If she had gone to such lengths to hide something, then forcing her hand too soon could be dangerous for me. And for the truth, I still didn't fully understand. So instead, I played the grieving mother, letting my voice tremble as I spoke of how empty the farmhouse felt, how I struggled to sort through Daniel's things. Her smile tightened, her fingers tapping the rim of her coffee cup. That small reaction was enough confirmation. She didn't want me digging. As we sat in that cafe, a memory surfaced: Melissa at the funeral, insisting on the private burial, refusing to let me see my son one last time. My grief twisted into anger. Had she orchestrated that to hide something from me? And now, with this house, Was she afraid I might uncover what she had buried along with him? When we parted, she hugged me with the cold embrace of a stranger. Her perfume lingered on my clothes long after she walked away, a reminder that she was close watching, waiting, perhaps plotting. Driving back to the farmhouse that night, I felt my fear sharpen into resolve. Whatever Melissa was hiding, Daniel wanted me to find it. That much I was sure of. The receipts were only the beginning. There were more secrets buried in that house, and if I wanted answers, I would have to go deeper, no matter what Melissa tried to do to stop me. The farmhouse grew colder the longer I stayed, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Nights were the worst. I would lie awake listening to the groan of the old beams, the whisper of wind through the cracks. It was during one of those sleepless nights that I noticed something strange, the outline of a trapdoor beneath the rug in the back hallway. At first, I hesitated. My heart raced as I pulled the rug aside and found a small iron ring set into the floorboards. My hands trembled as I lifted it, revealing a narrow staircase leading into darkness. The air that rose from below was damp and musty, the kind of smell that clings to forgotten places. I lit a flashlight and descended slowly, each step creaking beneath me. At the bottom, I found a hidden cellar not stocked with wine or canned goods, but filled with boxes stacked neatly against the walls. Some were labeled with dates, others bore nothing at all. My pulse quickened as I opened one. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, of Melissa with men I didn't recognize, smiling, laughing, wrapped in embraces that had nothing to do with grief. The deeper I dug, the darker it became. Receipts for wire transfers, passports with different names, documents signed by Melissa that tied her to accounts overseas. And then, at the very bottom of one box, something that made my blood run cold, Daniel's journal. I opened it with shaking hands. His handwriting filled the pages, each line heavier than the last. He wrote about arguments with Melissa, about money missing from his business, about discovering her betrayals. He feared for his safety. The final entry was the most haunting. If anything happens to me, it won't be an accident. She'll make sure of it. Tears blurred my vision as I clutched the journal to my chest. My son had tried to warn me, even after death. This farmhouse wasn't just an inheritance, it was a vault of truth he had left behind for me to uncover. As I stood there in the dim light of the cellar, a new fear crept in. If Melissa knew I had found this, what would she do? I wasn't just a grieving mother anymore. I was the keeper of Daniel's secrets, the ones his widow would do anything to erase. And in that silence underground, I realized I wasn't safe. After finding Daniel's journal, I couldn't shake the feeling that the walls of the farmhouse had eyes. Every creak in the floorboards made me turn my head. Every passing car on the dirt road made me tense. Melissa knew I was here, and if she suspected I had uncovered the truth, I couldn't imagine what she might do. That night, I stayed up late in the kitchen, Daniel's journal open in front of me. I traced his last words again and again until I nearly fell asleep at the table. Then, suddenly, the silence broke. A noise outside, footsteps on the porch. My heart pounded as I grabbed the flashlight, creeping toward the door. Through the thin curtains, I caught the shadow of someone standing there, unmoving. I held my breath, waiting. After a long moment, the figure stepped away into the darkness. I wanted to believe it was my imagination, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. Melissa, or someone she had sent, was watching me. The next morning, I tried to leave for town, but my car wouldn't start. The hood was fine the day before, and now the wires looked tampered with. That was when the fear sharpened into certainty. This wasn't just paranoia. She was trying to cut me off, to keep me trapped. I sat on the farmhouse steps, clutching Daniel's journal, when my phone rang. The sound made me jump. The number was unfamiliar, but something told me to answer. A man's voice came through, low and urgent. He said he had known my son, that Daniel had reached out to him before he died, desperate for help. And then came the words that froze my blood. You're in danger. If Melissa knows you found what's in that house, she won't let you walk away. Before I could ask questions, the line went dead. I sat there staring at the phone, my pulse racing. Who was he? How much did he know, and why call me now? Just as Melissa's shadow was closing in, one thing was certain: I couldn't stay passive any longer. If Daniel's death wasn't an accident, then Melissa wasn't just a grieving widow. She was a threat. And now, it was only a matter of time before our paths collided head-on. I knew I couldn't run forever. The farmhouse had given me answers, but it had also painted a target on my back. Melissa wasn't going to let me walk away with Daniel's secrets, not when they threatened the perfect image she'd built for herself. We finally collided one evening when she showed up unannounced. I heard the crunch of tires on the gravel driveway, and before I could hide the journal, she was already at the door. She stepped inside without waiting, her heels clicking against the old wooden floor, her smile sharp and cold. She asked if I'd been comfortable here, her eyes darting around as if she could see the evidence tucked away in the cellar. I tried to steady my breathing, to keep my voice calm, but my hands betrayed me, trembling as I gripped the back of a chair. Then the mask slipped. She accused me of meddling, of prying into things that didn't concern me. Her words spilled out with venom, and for the first time, I saw the woman Daniel must have faced in his final days. Not the grieving widow in black silk, but someone capable of cruelty and worse. I didn't shout back. Instead, I told her I knew the truth, that Daniel had feared her, that his death was no accident. Her face twisted, fury and fear flashing across her expression. For a heartbeat, I thought she might lunge at me, silence me right there in the house Daniel had trusted to keep his story alive. But then something unexpected happened. She laughed short, sharp, bitter. She said I couldn't prove anything, that no one would believe a lonely old woman clinging to ghosts. Then she walked out, her perfume lingering like smoke after a fire. As I watched her car disappear down the dirt road, my body shook with both terror and relief. I hadn't defeated her. Not yet. But I had faced her. And in that confrontation, I realized something powerful: she wasn't untouchable. Daniel had left me this farmhouse for a reason. The truth was in my hands now, and Melissa knew it. The final battle wasn't over, but I was no longer afraid to fight. When the dust settled, I sat alone in the farmhouse, Daniel's journal resting on the table beside me. The house was quiet, but my heart was not. Every word he left behind carried weight, not just as evidence against Melissa, but as a reminder of the son I thought I knew and the truths he had kept hidden to protect me. I realized then that this old farmhouse was never just a property. It was his last message, his final way of speaking to me. He hadn't trusted anyone else, not even the law, to hold what he had discovered. He trusted his mother. Melissa may still walk free for now, wrapped in her silk dresses and perfect lies, but I no longer fear her. I have Daniel's words, the receipts, the photographs, the pieces of a puzzle she can't erase. And more than that, I have the courage he left me with the strength to face what's ugly, even when it's hidden behind a beautiful mask. Grief doesn't end when the funeral is over. It changes shape. Mine has turned into resolve. I will keep telling Daniel's story, no matter who tries to silence it. And in doing so, I will honor him more than any monument or inheritance ever could. To anyone listening, I'll say this: pay attention to the silences, the things that don't add up, the moments your instincts whisper that something isn't right. Sometimes love blinds us, but truth has a way of finding its way to light if we're brave enough to look for it. This farmhouse gave me back my voice, and with it, I will not let my son's memory be rewritten by lies.